afternoon, students. Welcome to the lecture number 15, where we will be covering the revision of module 1 and 2 of subject direct taxation. Now, in the revision of module 1, we'll be revising these concepts. That doesn't mean that other concepts are not important, but since we have only 1 hour limit for revising module 1 and 2, so I'll be just revising certain important aspects. So first we'll be revising what is an assessment year and previous year, which is the basic of starting and direct taxation. Then persons under, what is the definition of persons under Income Tax Act, exempted income under income tax, then golden rule of Income Tax Act and exception to that rule, and residential status of individual. So what is the meaning of assessment year and previous year? This is the basic that you'll need to know. Okay, so let me tell you what is an assessment year. Assessment year is nothing but it is a period of 12 months. Okay, it will always start from 1st April every year and it will end on March of the succeeding year. Okay, and assessment year is a year which is succeeding the previous year. Okay, whatever income is you are earning in the previous year, it will be charged to tax, means the tax will be collected on that income in the assessment year. So our current assessment year is 2020, 2020, 2021, 2022 is our current assessment year. Next is, what is previous year? Now, previous year is nothing but again it is also named as a financial year, okay, which is immediately preceding your assessment year, and the income whatever you're earning in the previous year will be liable to tax in the assessment year. So our current previous year is 2019, 2020, and current assessment year is 2020, 2021. Okay, next comes is what is the definition of persons under Income Tax Act. So now who all is covered under the definition of persons under Income Tax Act? So individual is covered, HUF is also termed as a person under Income Tax Act, a company, a firm, AOP, BOI, local authority, artificial juridical person. All these 7 categories fall under the definition of person under Income Tax Act. Okay, now let us see what is the exempted income under Income Tax Act. So exempted income means on which tax will not be leviable, incomes which do not form part of total income. So for your exam perspective, students, they can ask you specify any 6 or any 7 or any 5 exempted income under Income Tax Act. That time you need to specify that income which is on your left hand side. That is agricultural income, it is an exempted income, amount received by a member from the income of an HUF, interest on NRE account, shared income of a partner. All this income on the left hand side is income which is completely exempted from income tax. And partially exempted income, as you know, gratuity, leave, travel concession, commutation of pension, retrenchment compensation. So in your exams, if they ask you to specify a certain number of incomes which are exempted under income tax, you need to specify. Okay, so you can either remember any of these. It is not necessary that you remember in order. You can remember any of these. Next, golden rule of income tax and exception to this rule. So what is the golden rule of income tax? This is again very important question. Golden rule of income tax is income of the previous year is assessed to tax in the assessment year. This we all know that income in the whatever is generated in the previous year will be assessed to tax in the assessment year. Now there is an exception to this rule, which means that income earned in the previous year will be assessed to tax in the previous year itself. So there are certain 5 categories of situation where income of the previous year will be assessed in the previous year itself. So first one is shipping business of non-resident, persons leaving India, AOP, BOI, artificial juridical person formed for a particular event or purpose, persons likely to transfer property to avoid taxes, and discontinued business. So these are the 5 situations where income earned in the previous year will be assessed to tax in the previous year itself. But exception to all these, the general golden rule of income tax is whatever income you're generating in the previous year, it will be assessed to tax in the assessment year. This is again very important. Next important thing in module 1 is determining the residential status of an individual SSC. Very important. One sum on this in the final examination will be asked. So if you know this provision, okay, you can solve any problem on residential status. So remember, an individual can either be a resident or a non-resident. Now suppose if he is tagged as a resident, he can either be resident and ordinarily resident or resident and not ordinarily resident. So see here, an individual is said to be resident. Like how will you tag him as a resident based on this provision if he's fulfilling these conditions? So an individual is said to be resident in India in any previous year if he satisfies any one of the following condition. So if any one of the following condition is getting satisfied, he will be tagged as a resident. So first one is he has been in India during the relevant previous year for a total period of 182 days or more. So your relevant previous year will be your current previous year. Now next, or he has been in India during the 4 years immediately preceding the previous year. So whatever is your current previous year, immediately 4 years before that, his stay should be for 4 years for a total period of 365 days or more. And means in this second condition, both these two conditions should be fulfilled. And he has been in India for at least 60 days in the previous year. That means in the current previous year, his stay should be at least 60 days. So if any one of these conditions is fulfilled, he will be termed as a resident in India. Once he is tagged as a resident in India, next we have to check whether he is a ROR or RNOR. So for that, again, we have two conditions to be checked, which are called as additional conditions. So an individual is said to be a resident and ordinarily resident if he satisfies both the following conditions. So here both the conditions should be fulfilled, then only he will be termed as ROR, otherwise he will be termed as RNOR. So he is a resident in any 2 out of last 10 years preceding the relevant previous year. So his stay in India should be at least 2 years. Out of the last 10 years, his stay should be at least for 2 years preceding the relevant previous year. And his total stay in India in the last 7 years preceding the relevant previous year is 730 days or more. That means from the current previous year preceding that year, you have to take 7 years, and his stay in that 7 years should be 730 days or more. So if any one of the condition is satisfied or none of the condition is satisfied, he will be termed as resident, not ordinarily resident. Otherwise, if both the conditions are satisfied, he will be termed as resident and ordinary resident. So in your first module, all these concepts what I have revised is very important. That doesn't mean that other concepts you need not study. That also is important, but I was just covering important concepts in this revision lecture, since in 1 hour module, since in 1 hour class, I have to complete the revision of 2 modules. Next, let us see the revision of module 2. In this, the important questions that will be asked in the examination is on allowances and their taxability, on gratuity and its taxability, provident fund and its taxability, perquisites and its taxability. So let us quickly see one full-fledged problem on salary income will be surely asked in the exam, and individual problems on these can be asked. So this is a format for computation of income under the head salaries. Now you all must be well versed with this format. So there is basic salary, commission, bonus, allowances, perquisites, VRC, RC, leave travel concession, leave encashment. Remember, leave encashment is also called as leave salary. You have gratuity, commuted pension, uncommuted pension, provident fund, gross salary. Remember, deduction under section 16, standard deduction is 50,000. Entertainment allowance only for government employees, professional tax, and then when you deduct that, you get income from the head salary. Okay. Now, important is what is allowances, what are the taxable allowances, partly taxable allowances, and fully exempt allowances. So allowances are nothing but some monetary benefit that is given to the employee to meet certain requirements. Okay, so in case of fully taxable, you have dearness allowance, overtime allowance, fixed medical allowance, city compensatory allowance, interim allowance, servant allowance, project allowance, tiffin, any other cash allowance, warden allowance, non-practicing allowance, and transport allowance. So all these allowances are fully taxable. No calculation is required in this aspect. In case of partly taxable, very important students, house rent allowance. An individual problem on house rent allowance can be asked in your final examination as well. So very important is house rent allowance. You need to know the provision of house rent allowance. And special allowances, where we have seen that children education and hostel allowance is more important because it has been frequently asked in the exam. Then fully exempt, these are the list of fully exempt allowances. Remember, these are fully exempt allowances, okay? Fully exempt incomes are different. The question on that will be different. Fully exempt allowances, the question on this will be different. So be very careful what question is being asked, whether it is on allowances or whether it is on income. Next, as I told you, house rent allowance is very important. The provision of it, you'll have to remember, it is at most important. So it is covered under section 10 subsection 13a. So house rent allowance is a special allowance specifically granted to an employee by his employer towards the payment of rent for residence of the employee. So what is the provision? Provision says that house rent allowance is not 100% taxable. There is certain exemption. Exemption will be the least of these three if that house is situated in Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai, Chennai. So what is the least of three? Actual house rent allowance received, rent paid minus 10% of salary, 50% of salary for the relevant period. When I say relevant period, means the period of stay of that particular employee in the rented residence. Next, other cities, you have HRA actually received for the relevant period, rent paid minus 10% of salary for the relevant period, 40% salary for the relevant period. So let us see what is the salary for this purpose. Basic salary, dearness allowance, if it qualifies for retirement benefit, and commission as a fixed percentage of turnover. Now, relevant period means the period of stay of the SSC in the accommodation. So very important students, this provision, please remember this provision. Next is gratuity. Now you all know what is the meaning of gratuity. It is nothing but the appreciation given to an employee for the loyalty of services for the number of years he has rendered the service to a particular organization. So if the gratuity is received by a member of defense service or by an employee of central government or by a member of civil service, then it is fully exempt. Now, in case of other employees, it will be taxable, but only partially taxable. There is certain exemption. Exemption is covered under section 10, subsection 10. So first you have to check whether the employee is covered by the Payment of Gratuity Act or not covered. If it's covered by the Payment of Gratuity Act, least of the following will be exempt. That is 20 lakh, which is fixed statutory limit, actual gratuity received, of 15 days salary based on the last drawn salary for each completed year of service or part thereof in excess of 6 months. So even if he's worked for part and that part is more than 6 months, then you have to take it as one complete year. And the number of days in a month has to be taken as 26. If is not covered by the Payment of Gratuity Act, then the following will be exempt. 20 lakh actual gratuity received, half month salary for each completed year of service fraction is to be ignored. So remember students, all This provision for gratuity, again, very, very, very important. You'll need to keep this in mind for final examination purpose. It is very important. One question on gratuity can be asked. Moving ahead, types of provident fund. As we already know, what are the different types of provident fund? Recognized, unrecognized, statutory, public provident fund. Again, you need to know what does each provident fund stand for. Then the taxability of the provident fund, as I told you, in recognized provident fund, if the employer is contributing up to 12%, it is exempt. In excess of 12%, it will be taxable. In case of employee's contribution, he will get a deduction under ATC. Interest, whatever is credited in that provident fund account, up to 9.5%, it is exempt. In excess of 9.5%, if he is getting any income interest, it will be taxable. Similarly, repayment of lump sum amount on retirement, resignation, or termination. Suppose he is getting a lump sum amount on his retirement, it will be taxable subject to certain conditions. That conditions we have already seen. Now, similarly, unrecognized provident fund, statutory provident fund, and public provident fund, you need to know these four things: whether employer's contribution to this particular fund, unrecognized provident fund, whether it is taxable or exempt. So it is not taxable. In case of statutory provident fund, it is fully exempt. Public provident fund, employer's contribution doesn't come into picture because public provident fund is open for even the public, where employer-employee relationship is not required. Now, employee's contribution again to unrecognized provident fund, not eligible for deduction, eligible for deduction under ATC, and eligible for deduction under ATC. Interest credited, it is not taxable yearly. Unrecognized provident fund, in case of statutory and public provident fund, it is fully exempt. Repayment at the time of retirement, whatever money you are getting from the provident fund. Remember, for unrecognized provident fund, employees contribution is not taxable. Interest on employees contribution will be taxable as income from other sources, and employers contribution plus interest will be taxable as salary. Whereas in case of statutory and public provident fund, it is fully exempt. Next is perquisites. Very, very important, because individual problems on perquisites can also be asked, and perquisite will always be forming a part of your full-fledged problems. At least one or two perquisites they will be asking you all in a full-fledged problems. So you'll need to know perquisite provisions very thoroughly. In perquisite provision, again,
waiting, ma'am.
Yeah,
Able to join the class. Some are waiting, ma'am.
who?
Yashaswini and Sandra are waiting.
Let them enter. I'll accept. Okay. Perquisites taxable in case of all the employees. Obligation of the employee discharged by the employer. This is very, very important. It will be frequently asked in the exam, that where any obligation was actually of the employee, but it is discharged by the employer, you have to fully tax it, take the entire amount in the outer column. Okay. Then the most important thing here is the value of gift, that is in excess of 5,000. There will be no perquisite, but if it is more than 5,000, then it will be taxable. Then in case of interest-free or concessional loans, again, whatever loans rate of interest has been charged by the company, and the rate of interest as per SBI, both has to be deducted and multiplied with the loan amount. Okay. Remember, students, perquisite is taxable in case of all the employees. Very important is obligation of the employee discharged by the employer, and rent-free accommodation, which we will be seeing now. Rent-free accommodation, again, very, very important provision which you all need to remember from exam point of view. It is very simple. Okay, just you need to see whether the accommodation is provided by the government to its employees. If it is government who is providing, then the value will be license fee determined by the government. That is the value that you're going to take as license fee determined by the government. Now, where the accommodation has been provided by any other employee, which is a non-government employee or semi-government employee, in that case, you have to see whether the accommodation is owned by the employer or taken on lease by the employer. If it is owned by the employer, then you have to check the population of the city. Remember students, population of the city will be given in the examination, and cities like Mumbai, Delhi, okay, you all know that the population will be more than 25 lakhs. But if it is a smaller city where you all are not knowing the population, the information about population will be given in the question. So based on the population, you have the taxability limit. So cities having population more than 25 lakhs, 15% of salary will be taxable. Cities having population between 25 lakhs and 10 lakhs, 10% of salary will be taxable. And in other cities, you have 7.5% of salaries. That is where the population is less than 10 lakhs. Now remember students, suppose if anything is recovered from the employee, any nominal amount is recovered from the employee, that has to be deducted while calculating the taxability. But provided only if something is recovered from the employee. Now if the accommodation is taken on lease by the employer, then lower of lease rental payable or by the employer of 15% of salary, okay, will be taxable. But if anything is recovered from the employee, that has to be deducted. Now this became as per unfurnished house. Furnished house, what you have to do is value as per unfurnished accommodation, as we have used this provision, plus 10% of cost of furniture. If that furniture is owned by the employer, then you have to add 10% of cost of furniture. But suppose the employer is taking the furniture on hire or lease, then actual hire charges paid should be the value of furnished house, in case the furniture is taken on lease or hire by the employer. Next, perquisites taxable only in the hands of specified employees. In among all this, just you'll need to remember that actual cost that the employer is bearing will be the value of perquisite. But suppose if anything is recovered from the employee, that has to be minus. But now in this, the most important is the use of motor car, which is frequently asked in the examination, okay, which is always asked in the examination is use of motor car. So you need to know the provision of motor car. For rest others, it is very simple. Whatever is the actual cost minus whatever is the actual cost minus whatever is recovered from the employee. So use of motor car, again very important. So let us see what is the valuation of motor car. If the car is owned by the employer, expenses also are met by the employer. Expenses like running expenses, maintenance, okay, servicing expenses for the car. And if that car is used entirely for office purpose by the employee, so it will not be taxable, exempt. Now, if it is used entirely for personal purpose, then whatever actual expenditure is made by the employer, that will be the value of perquisite for motor car. Now, suppose if it is used partly for personal use or partly for office use, then the taxability depends upon the CC engine capacity. If the cubic capacity of the engine is up to 1.6 liters, statutory value is given 1,800 per month you have to take. When I say per month, you have to multiply with the number of months the employee has used the car or has been given the car. Above 1.6 liters, it is 2,400 per month. Now, if driver is provided, then 900 per month should be added to these two values. Now, if driver is not provided, you will end your answer here itself. So, if chauffeur is provided, add 900 per month. Now, next situation where the car is owned by the, hired by the employee or owned by the employee and expenses are made by the employer. Again, for office use, no value. If it is partly used for personal purpose, then actual expenditure incurred by the employer as reduced by the perquisite value arrived above. So you have to take the calculation as per this 1,800 or 2,400 depending upon the CC engine of the capacity and deduct the actual expenditure incurred by the employer. Third situation is car owned, hired or owned by the employer and expenses made by the employee. So in that case, again, CC engine of the capacity taxability will be dependent on up to 1.6 liters. You have to take 600 per month and above 1.6 liters, 900 per month. Suppose driver also is provided along with it, then you have to add 900 per month to this value. Remember students, before charging 1800, 2400, 600 or 900, you have to see these conditions. Car is owned by whom, expenses are met by whom. If these, you have to check these and accordingly charge the statutory amount. And when you're charging the statutory amount, you have to not deduct any expenses, any amount if recovered by the employee. And you know that if the car is wholly used for personal purpose, then you have to take the actual expenditure incurred by the employer as the value of perquisite in case of motor car. Students, valuation of motor car, rent-free accommodation, house rent allowance, gratuity, provident fund, these all provisions are very, very important, which are frequently asked in the exam. So please study these provisions thoroughly, because based on the provision you can solve the problem. So we have completed the revision of module 1 and 2. I have gone too very fast because I had to complete the revision of both the modules. So thank you so much students. We have completed the revision of module 1 and 2. Remember